And we're talking about FMCSA ratings, right? There are 4 ratings that the government can give you after they're done knocking on your door and going through your underwear drawer and digging through all your compliance stuff. One is satisfactory, one is non-rated. Those are the 2 best ones, man. If they find something wrong or something they don't love, then you're going to either end up conditional or unsatisfactory. How do you get the feds to come in and do a full review on your company, right? That's the trick.
So how do you get that? How does that happen these days?
I know how you like reading between the lines, and get this one. If you have 1 alert or 2 alerts in your CSA, you're likely going to get a focused review on those 2 alerts. Right. If you have 5 alerts, they have to check almost everything because you're bad everywhere. Well, then you're going to get a full review because you have 5 alerts. And then let's say you get a conditional rating or unsat off that full review. Then you demonstrate you fixed everything. They'll upgrade you to satisfactory. Hold the phone. All right, man. So I used to be a State Patrol inspector. I worked the scales for probably 12 years. And then I left the State Patrol after pulling over a bunch of trucks at scales and became an investigator with the feds. So I'm the one that knocked on company doors and did full reviews of the company's safety. Wow. Then I actually left and became a hazmat guy for 3 years with the FAA. And now I'm a truck insurance guy. I'm a DOT consultant, but my primary focus is truckingwins.com to try to educate everybody out there in compliance issues, CSA to reviews, etc.
No, I love it. No, I appreciate you for being on the show, John. So for all the mother truckers out there, just know this man had the job that I would say in popular demand were to keep the commercial vehicles safe on the road. But sometimes we're just like, we don't see eye to eye. So the fact that we can have you on the show, John, and just share your experience is great. One issue I would say that a lot of truck drivers are going to have, especially the ones that are going to go owner operator, right? You're going to have your own company, and there's a part of this that's important. And there's some scores that relate to this that can be your success or demise in the trucking industry to make some money. Would you agree, John?
Well, 100%. There's really 2 major things that the government can do to mess with your company. One is they can make your CSA scores way too high, and then you're out of whack. Now, they can't do it as long as at roadside during scales and getting pulled over, you don't do nothing wrong, right? The other way they can, I will say, mess with you, but cause a problem to your company from a government standpoint is they can come knock on your door, go through all of your stuff, like say, look in your underwear drawer, flip everything upside down. And if they find too many things wrong, they can give you a bad rating. If you can somehow keep a good rating and low CSA scores, I wouldn't say the government's your friend, but they're certainly not your enemy.
I got you. And so when it comes to getting a good rating, are there basic things that people are doing to give themselves a bad rating that you would say?
Well, I would say you started with the single truck guy that's starting a company. Right. Within 18 months, they're going to do something called a safety audit. That safety audit is simply a pass-fail scenario. They'll come in and they'll just take really cursory looks saying, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? If you pass it, then you continue to operate. If you fail, you have to do a corrective action plan. If they like what they see, meaning you've taken some steps to be better, then they'll make you a pass on a safety audit. But a safety audit should not be confused with a review. Safety audits never result in bad ratings, just pass-fail.
Gotcha. And so how can they get some information on what to do before they get that safety review or whatnot?
All right. Yeah. So if you start your company, you pass the safety audit, you think you're in the clear. There's just a few ways to get the government to come knock on your door. Number one, if you have an alert in CSA in one of the categories, if you have 1 alert, they may come knock. You have 2, more likely. 3, more likely. So keep your CSA scores out of the alert status, and you're going to probably have reduced by 80% the chance of them coming and knocking on your door. But there's still other ways, right?
John, just to make it simple for people, CSA, you want to keep it low. What does that stand for? What is that exactly for the new driver that's coming into the business? Because it's all this is, maybe scaring them a little bit,
Well, your CSA scores cannot go up. Really, they can never go up unless you get violations at scales or the roadside.
Gotcha.
So if you keep roadside inspections clean and getting pulled into a scale and you keep all the violations from happening, you won't have a high CSA score in any category other than crash. Well, how do you make it so you don't get a crash alert? Don't crash.
I got you.
Right?
I got you. So I hear you. So let's get into what happened. We won't name the company, but there's something very interesting that happened recently. And this isn't a one-man woman shop. This is over how many trucks do they have?
Well, it's a company that was not a customer of mine. The feds came and knocked on their door because they had 2 CSA alerts because their roadside performance wasn't up to par. So like I said, they invited the government to come knock on their door. So the government came in, dug through their underwear drawer per se, went through all the violations without getting specific, and gave them a proposed conditional rating because of 3 specific violations they were alleged to have violated. Right?
Can we give a ballpark of what that is without saying what that is, or is that under wraps?
Nope. So here's what happened. There were 3 critical violations. You can have some violations during a review, but if you have ones that are acute or critical, you're going to end up potentially with a bad rating. And in this case, a proposed conditional. So when I saw the review, they gave me the review a couple weeks after it was done and says, can you help us? We can't have a conditional rating. It's going to interrupt our business. We'll lose customers, etc. When I looked at the review, given what I used to do, I knew something was wrong. They were alleged to have violated 3 critical violations, and 2 of those 3 I didn't agree with. I felt the investigator was wrong.
And what was it? What was it? I'm hearing this like it's a horror story.
Yeah. So the first one was false logs. There's something called an EFOTM. It's like a field operations training manual the feds have to follow when doing a review. Well, this company was supposed to have 27 drivers selected for the review because of how large they were. Well, the EFOTM says you have to choose 30 driver logs per driver. So 27 drivers selected times 30 days is 810. Well, the government short sampled. They did not give the trucking company credit for the whole 810 days checked. And it wasn't the trucking company's fault. It was a mistake by the investigator. So then the amount of violations they had put them into a conditional rating only because they didn't give them full sample credit. Example would be they found 71 false logs that would hurt your rating. And they only gave them credit for 694 days checked. Well, 71 is slightly over 10% of 694. When you're over 10%, that's critical. But in reality, it should have been 71 logs at 810 checked.
At 810 looks, so
which would have not put them over the critical threshold and would not have resulted in this proposed conditional rating. So the investigator made mistakes, not only legally, but within FMCSA policy, and the trucking company knew no better. But because I used to work there, I did. So I called the Fed office and I said, you need to explain this to me. And they were less than cordial at first, right?
I bet. And, it's crazy. So, you think about that and you're like, you have 500 trucks, you have a multi-million-dollar business. If you have an unsatisfactory rating, then
or conditional,
right? Then you can lose your customers.
Yep.
And your business could go belly up. And pretty much they got lazy and looked at over 600 and some instead of the 800 they were supposed to look at.
Yep.
And that's crazy.
So then I called the Fed office and I said, hey, I'm confused. I used to work at FMCSA, and the Fed office said, are you trying to intimidate us? I said, no, I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm just trying to tell you that I'm not dumb and I know how this process works. And I think there was a flaw, right? And they said, we're not going to redo this review. Well, I said, well, in the regulations under 385.15, if I feel the review wasn't done correctly, I can do an administrative review to Washington, D.C., and then that goes to the service center attorneys. And then you're going to have to answer to your own attorneys in Washington, D.C. Why don't we just handle this man on man, grown on grown within the two of us, within your division office and our trucking company, so we can understand it, so we don't have to involve the powers that be.
Right.
And he said, let's look into this. And we scheduled a meeting the following week, and the rhetoric changed, completely changed. And at the end of the day, without getting into a lot of details, unless you want to, because it's very interesting, the review was removed as a proposed conditional and put back in the satisfactory status with 71 violations found with the proper sample size, thus being under the 10% and not forming a conditional proposed rating on that carrier.
No, I would say that's very interesting. Let's look at this real quick, right? So, and I might put this in the beginning of the video, for all the people out here, because a lot of people, they want to become truck drivers. They want to own their business one day and they want to make some money. So, making sure that you have a satisfactory rating is extremely important. You don't want a conditional, or you don't want a unsatisfactory, right? And so looking at that, can you break down each one just from what that is, and so that, our viewers can know?
Yeah. Before we get into the scenario that we're going to talk about with a real life situation that occurred with a company that underwent a review with a proposed conditional, you need to understand what the different ratings are.
Gotcha.
So here's how it works. A satisfactory rating. Back in the day, there was no unrated carriers. They were only satisfactory, conditional, or unsat. But since FMCSA started doing focused reviews, now they have all these unrated carriers, right? These unrated carriers are ones that show non-rated on the system. That means they only underwent a focused review where they checked a few items or have never had a review ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you know what? I want to start this over. So delete that. Let's start it over.
Okay? Yeah, start it over. Go ahead.
All right. Before we get into a scenario that occurred with, a customer that I'm aware of, as it relates to them having a proposed conditional rating, we really need to understand what the ratings are. Back in the day, if you underwent a review, it could only result in a satisfactory, conditional, or unsatisfactory rating. Now, they added unrated carrier when a review occurs. Prior to CSA, and, I don't like that how I'm doing that. Let's start it over again. Ready? Sorry, buddy.
No, you're good. Good. Start it when you're ready.
Before we get into a situation about a customer of mine and how they had a proposed conditional rating, we need to understand what ratings there are. There are 4 ratings right now at FMCSA: satisfactory and unrated. Those are kind of interchangeable in the eyes of the government because neither one has an adverse effect on insurance. It doesn't show that you had violations during a review. However, conditional and unsat, there's some negative connotation to those. Conditional means you had violations and they are negative on your company, and it could hurt your insurance. It could hurt getting loads from brokers. It could hurt when you get sued. The government could come in again to follow up on that rating, but it's not as bad as unsat. Unsat means you did so many things wrong that if you don't fix this and demonstrate to the government you fixed it, they're going to shut you down. You will never get shut down as a conditional carrier. So then we go back to unrated and satisfactory. The only way to get a satisfactory rating is to undergo a full review of every aspect. The government does very little of those now because most reviews are now focused. Focused because they only look at a little bit of stuff based on your CSA scores and if they're elevated. So most reviews, if you pass them, will be unrated. If you fail them in some level, they're going to be conditional or unsat. The only satisfactory carriers today are ones that have been around a long time and they got reviewed under the old review process where there weren't focus reviews, or the government came in and did a full review. Problem is, some shippers and some brokers want you to have a satisfactory rating or they won't give you loads. It's because those shippers and brokers don't understand that in this new world called CSA with focus reviews, it is very difficult for a good trucking company to get a satisfactory rating.
And that's just because these days they don't do reviews like they did back then. They just do these focused ones, right? So would you say that for majority of new trucking companies, you will have most likely a unrated score?
100% yes. I would say for a new trucking company, it's going to be next to impossible to have a satisfactory rating until you get lucky. Now, how do you get lucky? Investigators around the country have to keep their certification to do reviews. They have to do 8 full reviews a year. If somehow you undergo a review and you happen to be selected for a full review to keep that investigator's certification, that's kind of the only way a new trucking company has any real shot to be satisfactory.
What up? So, okay. Let me read between these lines real quick. Let me put you back on the big screen. Okay, so John, tell me this. If you're a one truck company and you yourself as an investigator, right, go out and give a review and you give a satisfactory score, that one trucking company can have a satisfactory score?
100%. If they go into a one truck company and they want their certification and they pick you as the one that gets the full review, they're going to check your drug testing, your CDLs, your DQ file, your hours of service, your vehicle maintenance, your hazmat. They're going to check all areas. It's not a focus review. And if you pass it, you will be satisfactory. But another one truck company gets in, has one alert and hours of service. They come in and say, we just want to look at your logbooks, meaning an hours of service focus review, and you pass the hours of service portion, you'll be unrated. How do you get the feds to come in and do a full review on your company, right? That's the trick.
So how do you get that? How does that happen these days?
I know how you like reading between the lines, and get this one. If you have 1 alert or 2 alerts in your CSA, you're likely going to get a focused review on those 2 alerts. Right. If you have 5 alerts, they have to check almost everything because you're bad everywhere. Well, then you're going to get a full review because you have 5 alerts. And then let's say you get a conditional rating or unsat off that full review. Then you demonstrate you fixed everything. They'll upgrade you to satisfactory. Hold the phone. You mean whoa. I have 1 alert, you're going to do a focus review, and I'm going to pass, and I'm going to be non-rated. But if I have 5 alerts and you happen to do a full because I stink everywhere, then I get a bad rating and I upgrade my rating and you grant me an upgrade, you're going to make me satisfactory? Yes, that's exactly what I just said.
So
it's nonsense. Keep laughing, buddy, because it's true. It's nonsense.
And so the only way to get a satisfactory score these days, reading between the lines, is you have to suck as a company, get a review, which you will get a full one, which will be unsatisfactory, which means you're close to getting shut down.
Yep.
But then you do everything in your power to do everything right after that. Then they come back and review you. And then from that, you'll get a satisfactory score. And having a satisfactory score will make you potentially more money because now you will get an opportunity to book loads with shippers that only work with people that have satisfactory scores.
You got it. You got it 100%.
Oh shoot!
Right?
Oh shoot! Okay, I don't know how I will not be able to really promote this. Like, hey guys, make sure your company sucks. Get a review. Don't be scared. Fix it, and now you have a satisfactory score. And now you got a cutting edge.
So now the only other way is to get lucky and be one of those 8 per investigator. You want to hear the third way?
All right, tell me. How much money?
It's the dumbest thing in the whole world.
All right, tell me.
The federal government is required to investigate complaints. And a complaint is anonymous. If you filed a complaint against yourself with supporting documents that you're violating drug and alcohol, CDLs, DQ files, hours of service, vehicle maintenance, meaning there's complaints in every single area, they're more likely to do a full review to investigate all of those complaints. Do you understand?
That's crazy. So,
No.
number one, get lucky by having an investigator have to review you because
Yep.
he has to do 8 a year. Or
Yep.
number two, stink and get 5 alerts where they will review you. Then you'll get unsatisfactory, and then you go back around and change it. Then you get a satisfactory score. Or the third one, mother truckers, complain on yourself that you're not doing your hours of service, your logs are crap, you're faking everything. And if you get enough complaints, they'll review you. But then if your things are good to go, you'll get a satisfactory score.
Yep. And every trucking company out there that does everything right from the beginning will never get a review and will never have a satisfactory rating ever.
That's crazy. So I want to talk to like a company that has a satisfactory score. Like, do they make more money by having a satisfactory score?
Well, here's an example. I'll give you an example. I have a trucking company in Wisconsin. They wanted to contract with a big shipper, but they're non-rated. The reason they're non-rated is they haven't had a compliance review from the Fed since 1990. Why? Because they're awesome. But they can't get a contract with that shipper because they're non-rated, but they haven't had a review since 1990, meaning their CSA scores and they haven't had any complaints and they haven't had any bad crashes. This company stayed out of FMCSA's radar for 3 decades, and they can't get the contract because they're non-rated.
I'll tell you, man, it's I think we got to end it on this is, the craziest way or understanding the FMCSA's unrated, unsatisfactory, conditional, or satisfactory scores, right? Like, I got to figure out how I'm going to do this title, but pretty crazy. I appreciate you for that. No,
yeah,
I think that's good
for you,
man.
These ratings are misunderstood, and this is why. The ratings have been around before they started doing focus reviews. You get it?
Right.
So before they started doing focus reviews, every review was a full review. So that means every trucking company that had a review from the feds would either be satisfactory, conditional, or unsat. The only ones that were unrated were the ones that never got a review, right?
When did that law start or rule or what have you?
It was probably, whenever CSA started. I'd have to Google it, man. I don't know exactly when it was. Now, I will tell you this. If you think about this in the whole scheme of things, from a safety perspective, what's the best rating? Unrated.
Yeah.
A carrier that has never done anything to ever warrant a knock on the door from the feds is way better than a carrier that did get a knock on the door from the feds. So whether you're an old school carrier with a satisfactory rating from years gone by, right? Or you're a new carrier that either got lucky, had 5 alerts and did a review and somehow worked your way back to satisfactory. Or if you filed a bunch of complaints on yourself, you see, those are still all worse than unrated carriers.
Right. But now, you don't get to gain all the goodness that comes with the satisfactory score because these shippers don't understand ratings.
And the brokers. So what do we need to do? We need to educate shippers and brokers and kind of try to explain to them that non-rated or unrated is kind of better than satisfactory.
Gotcha.
Because the only way to get satisfactory is you had to have done something wrong at some point to warrant a review, right?
Gotcha. No, I appreciate you, brother. No, thank you for this. My man John here. Show the background real quick. Where can they go? Trucking Wins.
Yep. All right. So like I said, ex-FMCSA inspector, ex-investigator with the feds, hazmat agent with the feds, 20 plus years. What am I doing now? I'm making training videos at truckingwins.com. I'm making these videos to help you, the trucker, the safety director. You're confused about personal conveyance? Truckingwins.com. You don't understand split sleeper? Truckingwins.com. You don't understand the drug and alcohol clearinghouse? You don't know how to do a pre-trip inspection? I have a slew of training videos where it speaks directly and honest, not a bunch of fluff that's boring that'll put you to sleep. I speak direct in all these categories to help you. Knowledge is power. Come see us at truckingwins.com.